Hi, I'm Jennifer,
And I'm Jared.
and this is Hello Scriptures Podcast, where we talk about Come Follow Me, the scriptures, and helping you liken the scriptures to your family through some of our experiences and just some of our insights.
Yep, absolutely. And so for Come Follow Me this week, we're studying the book of Mosiah, which is a big transition time coming from the small plates and the words of Mormon, and then going into now we're officially in the large plates and officially in Mormon's, I guess, kind of summary and his abridgment, as he calls it, of those large plates. And so I think he says a 100th part that we get. And so the big thing here is we actually pick up at the end of Omni, it talks about King Benjamin and this group of people that went to Zarahemla, and first with King Mosiah, and then ultimately there was his son, King Benjamin. And so this is King Benjamin that we heard about in Omni, and that's right where Mormon chooses to start things off. And so, excited to jump into that and King Benjamin's address and, some of the opportunities we have. And obviously, we always talk about King Benjamin's address and how it's similar to General Conference, all the people gathered together. And so with General Conference happening recently, definitely timely there. And I think there were some fun things that definitely stood out to our family from General Conference. And I think that there's this great concept of gathering, the great blessings that come, I think, when we gather our families. One of the things that we've really always focused on is having family dinner and using that as an opportunity to get together. Sometimes it's complete chaos, but most of the time they eat most of the food we put on the table, and usually something. And I think that the thing that's been great about it is the impromptu or more organic conversations we can have about the gospel in that. And it doesn't always have to be these grand lessons where we're opening up the scriptures, but instead asking questions and really taking the opportunity to get the kids to think a little bit. And so I really appreciated that opportunity to gather. And we have here this group of people, Zarahemlites, I don't know what we call them, and the now Nephite people are here in Zarahemla, gathered together with them, and King Benjamin has had them gather together to give him his final words and his final address.
Well, yeah, and I think that, going back to the whole General Conference tie-in, I thought it was interesting how it talked about how King Benjamin really didn't have the people worship him. It was constantly refocusing them to Christ, to God, to service of others. And I think there's an awesome tie-in to even our prophet, President Nelson, and his focus on bringing us back to Christ, and King Benjamin's focus on bringing us back to Christ. And that tie back to General Conference and everyday life is, how does it bring us back to Christ?
Yeah, and I think, I love that concept because President Nelson was quoted so much in this General Conference. I think maybe more than I remember a current living prophet ever being quoted. Even Elder Rasband, I always get Elder Rasband and Elder Renlund, the two R apostles' names mixed up. Elder Rasband talked about his experience giving a temple dedication and how he was inspired to add back in, or basically to add in words that were from our current prophet, about thinking celestial and all of the various things that our prophet has encouraged us to do. And my guess is that for King Benjamin, there were a lot of things that he was reminding people of in this address, in this sermon, that this wasn't, perhaps some of these things were new, and it's clear that things definitely clicked for people. We'll talk about that more next week. But the lessons that he was sharing, again, back to what we were talking about last week, that I think as parents, these lessons are sinking in, and repetition is the law of learning. And with President Nelson, even today, or in General Conference recently, he's constantly sharing the same things. And it was great to see that reiterated by so many of the leaders of our church as they shared the talks that they had.
Yeah, for sure. Just that really big focus on service of others, service in the name of God, and serving in general. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was such a great concept. And I've always loved that connection by King Benjamin where he talks about service and how we're basically in perpetual or constant debt to God. That, if we were to do everything in our power and constantly work as hard as we could, that we would still always be in debt to God. And I think as Latter-day Saints, where I know when I was in high school, I got in frequent, frustrating conversations with members not of our faith about, works is important and read James and all of these things that I think sometimes we get caught up in this concept of works. And I think the reality of it is at the end of the day, it really is by grace that we're saved. And I'm thrilled that they're putting back into the hymn book, Come Thou Fount, because I think that so beautifully emphasizes that that it's grace. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily unconstrained to be. And I think that King Benjamin definitely reiterates that again and again in his words that we're in debt. And thanks to Christ, we can be free.
For sure. I think it's really interesting in general. And I love the refocus back on grace as well. Hypothetically, you could do nothing, you will still be resurrected and saved, right? Like that grace is still sufficient and fills the needs. But I think we have a unique take where we're constantly trying to improve ourselves. And every day get a little bit better. I think that sometimes we get this almost checklist in our heads of everything we need to do, instead of focusing on what we're doing well, and maybe just the next small thing that we can do better to continue to improve and change as a person, to become more celestial, to think more celestial, and help to add more to the bucket, although we'll never be able to fill the bucket.
Yeah, a few years ago, I decided to start listening more to Christian radio, and it's been a really inspiring experience to learn from our fellow Christian friends and brothers and sisters. And one of the things that's really struck me through that process is that I think so often I think of grace as a emergency valve, or a final concluding boost that, we need to be able to do what we need to be able to be saved. And I think that even if we look at the fact that there are works that we need to do and things that need to be done, that we need to change, that even through that process, that it's grace that can help us to do that. That it really is a daily process of drawing upon grace. And that's been really a powerful key for me that has been unlocked thinking about grace in those terms where, the whole concept of, pray like it's up to God and then work like it's up to you. And it's like, no, I don't think so. I think it's pray like it's up to God and then work like he can help you to do all things. And I think that unlocks things for us and helps us to be able to partner with him. In fact, he's very clear that his yoke is easy and that we can partner with him, and we can ultimately, through him and through his grace, do all things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's, really, it's a unique concept. I feel like that's been almost, I want to say, added back in, but I think it's hard for us as Latter-day Saints to sometimes grasp, as a religion of, almost lists of things you need to do.
We love our lists. And, I think President Nelson has been really good about helping us to understand that bigger picture. And I think King Benjamin is a great example of a prophet king, I guess we could call him, who really focused his people back into that it truly is by grace that we are saved. And, to me, I love analogies. And one of the analogies that came to my mind thinking about this was the concept of an astronaut and a rocket ship. And so, this concept that if our path back to heaven, leaving this earth and being able to return back to live with God is like a rocket ship, that we are the astronauts, right? And that doesn't mean, if you look at what astronauts have to go through, there's training and there's a tremendous amount of effort. There's a team they have to work with. They partner. We don't send just one person by themselves, right? It's a group, a team of people, and a process that they go through to get there. And to me, if we are the astronauts that have to train and work and get on that rocket ship, to me, it's that Jesus Christ and his grace are in the rocket ship. And oh, by the way, not only is he the rocket ship, he's also the other astronaut on the rocket ship with us, sitting there with us, helping us, coaching us, telling us it's going to be okay, celebrating with us when, the amazing experience of being able to look back and see where we've been. And he's also on ground control, talking to us through all of the issues and challenges. But there is no astronaut that could build a rocket ship on their own. It would take thousands. It takes thousands of people, and it would take thousands of astronauts, probably thousands of years to learn the science and all of the various things that go into it. It's not something they can do on their own. And so what are they asked to do? They're still asked to train, to be ready, to be prepared to change themselves physically and emotionally and mentally, and then be prepared to get on the rocket that day, and then have the courage and faith that God will take them the rest of the way. And so, I can't help but think about how much God loves us and that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to help us as these astronauts on Earth to be able to travel to the stars because of Jesus Christ. So maybe shifting gears a little bit, if that's some of the way that grace works, let's talk a little bit about the natural man. This is something that we talk a lot about, which I think is kind of the us part, right? And this is something that I think we've, especially in a lot of the things we see on social media, a lot of the things we see in various movements and discussions and forums and news articles, is this concept of I'm good the way that I am. Don't ask me to change. I don't need to be any different. Accept me for who I am. And this is something we've talked a lot about.
A lot. Yeah, I think that it is tough, especially because I think change isn't easy. It's hard. It can come with heartache. No one wants to feel vulnerable and admit what they need to fix or how they can improve. And the natural man is very much like, there is nothing you need to change. You're great the way you are. Sit back, enjoy life. Things are good. And I think it's an interesting shift that's happened in society that I feel like, especially even as a mother and a parent, like we struggle with sometimes, especially me as a mother, is, you're often in service to your kids, to others, and it's important to take time for yourself, but there's that balance of serving your family and only serving yourself, and finding that balance in between of how can I be a better mother without being like, I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, I think having kids has definitely been really interesting of, they're not, what's blown us away is how much we have to teach them, they're not going to figure out how to throw a ball on their own. They're not going to figure out how to tie their shoes on their own. They're not going to figure out how to read on their own. And obviously there's great support with school and other things, but this concept of continually growing and changing and being able to become someone is, I think, just a really interesting concept that unfortunately the world has lost a little bit of sight of. I believe that, honestly, this is one of the tools of the adversary in these last days, is to force or cause us to think that we should be complacent. Now, as oftentimes the adversary does, he has taken something good and mixed it so that it sounds good. Because the reality of it is, we should be accepting and loving and supportive of people at whatever stage they are. And the church should always be a safe place. Our goals and roles as parents, as husbands and fathers and moms and all of these various roles that we have as employees, whatever it may be, we should always be loving and kind and supportive, and recognizing, in fact, meeting people where they are. But it doesn't mean we stop there. I think that's the gap. I think that's the missing piece is, yep, this is where you are. Don't you just love it here? Aren't you just so comfortable? Let's stay here. Instead, I think that God is asking us to grow and to stretch. I've always loved, I'm pretty sure it was C.S. Lewis talked about how when we first start doing this home remodel with God, at first, we're painting the walls, moving around some furniture, and things are looking really nice. We're really happy with it. Well, then he starts moving walls and, breaking things down and completely redoing areas and things. And it's like, oh, no, I didn't sign up for this. And the reality of it is that, and this is what C.S. Lewis talks about, is that God is not taking us this humble cottage. He's helping create a mansion. And if he's going to do that in our lives, if he's going to help us become as he is, if he's going to help us to stretch and grow and to become true disciples of Jesus Christ, man, he's got a lot of work to do in all of us. And if we are complacent or comfortable where we are, then perhaps there's an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you were just mentioning about growing and stretching reminded me of being young. And I was one of those people that had growing pains in my legs. And I remember my mom giving me pain medication, like a Tylenol, rubbing my legs, and, thinking back to braces, all these things that are painful and uncomfortable and, are something that you go through to improve yourself, your teeth, the height of you growing, anything like that, LASIK to fix, your vision. These are all things that are uncomfortable as you're going through them, but typically it settles in and then you're left with a great result at the end.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting reading that. So this is in Mosiah 3, verse 19. And so it talks about how the natural man is an enemy to God and has been from the fall of Adam. It will be forever and ever. So this concept of we're good where we are, well, no, we're not, right? And so he then says, unless, and I love unless in the scriptures because it helps me believe that there's a plan, and there is. It says, unless he yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit and putteth off the natural man and becometh a saint through the atonement of Jesus Christ, and becometh as a child, submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, willing to submit to all things which the Lord seeth fit to inflict upon him, even as a child does submit to his father. And it's interesting, our second right now is in what we like to call the magic years, kind of right around that 8 or 9, where
our favorite year.
Yeah, it's been, and it's been really great. He's really receptive to feedback right now, and we have to be careful with that. But the conversation we'll have with him, it feels so honest and sincere. It reminds me of this concept of submissive like a child. And I don't think that means that we just lay down and take it.
Yeah.
But instead, I think it means that we're willing to listen.
Yeah, I think we're vulnerable and open to take feedback, because being a stubborn person, I don't like feedback. Especially if you work in the corporate world, you may often hear like that feedback is a gift. Feedback is, important. Feedback helps you grow and change, and it does. But no one likes to hear what they're doing wrong, or what's wrong with them, or what needs to be changed. And I think instead of being defensive and putting up your walls and being like, oh no, I don't need to change anything, I'm just fine the way I am. It's that, like you said, being submissive, and that you're open to hearing what they have to say, and taking that personal stock yourself and deciding if that is something that needs to change or isn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you remind me of, so one of the things that I do for work is design reviews, is what we typically call them, or critiques. And those critiques can get very critical. And I found early on in my career, it was really hard, really painful. I would come out of those and it was just like, what just happened? Man, I spent the last 3 months designing this thing and I'm so proud of it. And everyone just ripped it to shreds. And now I've been doing it for quite some time. And I'll admit, sometimes that still happens. I come home some days and Jen's like, how was work? And it's like, oh man, today was a real doozy. People really ripped it apart. And you're putting a piece of yourself out there. But, I've found that it's that perspective, that willingness to listen, that I'm a sincere believer that that our growth is directly linked to how much we're willing to receive feedback. Doesn't mean we always have to act on it, right? It may be, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But if we can honestly and sincerely listen to it, again, humble ourselves like a child, and fill ourselves full of that love, and then ultimately partner with Christ, we can change. And that's what the gospel is all about, is change.
Sure. I would say, I think that natural man and being willing to submit to God plays really well into the service aspect as well that Mosiah covers.
King Benjamin. Yep.
Around the whole aspect of specifically that we are God's hands on earth, and serving others. We had a great bishop in Singles Ward who I feel like was the epitome of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who always acted on what he was given and then was given more.
Yeah. I need to be better about that. But it's interesting that the Lord will prompt us, will guide us, will help us, will place people in our paths. We're told constantly by the leaders of the church that there's no chance meetings or encounters. And I have been very deeply blessed by people who have served me over the years, and I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had, though small, to serve others. And I think that, as parents, it's a good reminder that your service opportunities may be mainly focused on your family. Doesn't mean that if the elders quorum president calls and asks you to help move, that maybe there's not an opportunity there. But I do think that we shouldn't beat ourselves up over that time or season, and that that time that we can spend with our family, magnifying our calling, whatever that may be, magnifying our ministering assignments, whatever that may be, that there's great service that can happen. And then I think there's a lot that can happen in the community. It's amazing how many opportunities there are. And that's something that I think we've been trying to find ways to do with our kids, is to find ways to get them to help serve. Obviously, it's always nice when they serve us and do the dishes or things like that.
Serving your own family back.
Yeah, but
it's a good place to start.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, that's always a good reminder of like any amount, it's not like we need to have this massive Eagle project level service project all the time. It can be small things. And
I think even as small as being a friend to someone at school, reaching out to say hi, sending someone a text, you know what I mean? I think that first off, like in our time and season, especially with young kids, there's a lot of service happening to our children and in our home. But I think also too, teaching our kids that service can be small and it doesn't need to be these grand gestures or these huge things. And that those little outreaches go a long way in impacting people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we love the words of King Benjamin. It's been fun reading this week, and we look forward to continuing to read his words. And, I think that he's such a great example of a servant leader and one who truly understood grace and the atonement of Jesus Christ. And I'm grateful that Mormon decided to start us off here. Truly a powerful prophet king who, much like we gather as families now, the people then gathered and were able to learn from him. And we'll learn in the coming chapters what that gathering meant and how it changed them. And so, I think it's, as you study this week, definitely we would encourage you to look for ways of how these words can change you. And I know that for me, each time I read them, there's change and something that I learn and opportunities to grow. And so we're grateful for it and look forward to hearing your words and your comments as we engage with you in wherever you may be watching with this. We'd love to get your thoughts and what stood out to you in the words from King Benjamin so long ago that still resonate with us today.
Yeah. I mean, I'd throw out even like, share your great ideas of like little acts of service. I think that it's easy to sometimes overlook the little things and just be like, I want to do something big rather than, something small. What are some of those small things that may have had an impact on you or on others?
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks so much for joining us. And we'll be back next week.
Yep. Enjoy your reading.
All right.
Bye-bye. What was that, 25 minutes?
There we go. Welcome didn't die.
I feel like we were